Today, when we talk about IDP rights, we first of all, in the first place, we want to extend our appreciation to our defenders and men and women that are standing up for our freedom, and we want to pay our respects to the people that have sacrificed their life for our benefit. And this is why we would like to have a minute of silence here. We're going to talk about the advocacy of IDPs and the rights of IDPs, and we're going to have an opportunity to hear some study results. And thank you all the NGOs, thank you local self-governance, and thank you central authorities that have something to do with this intervention, and also to the opening up of this intervention itself. And now Ms. Marina Tenisuk is given the floor. She's the Deputy Minister on the Development of Communities and Territories, and she's going to talk about investments. Hello, good afternoon. Now, I would like to start with saying that I am personally concerned about all the issues being raised today, is because I'm myself from Crimea, and formally I'm not an IDP, but when it comes to access to my native soil and my native family, I got none. I'm into investments, but I'm rather concentrated to raise means for recovery. But anyway, as a person that understands your problems, and as a ministry, we're trying to focus those investments on some very urgent primary needs, essential needs, which come down to accommodation, residence, social services, including education, schools, and kindergartens that allow a person to have a roof over their head and an opportunity to work when you can leave your child with someone with a facility specialized in that. So in turn, we at the ministry have a great portfolio of projects that are concentrated on residential issues, and also we're working with all the ministries so that we're going to get to the bottom of that issue. We're going to close their issues with living conditions with residents, and it's understood that they can be issued a compensation certificate, but if somebody is economically active, they might be into employment programs. It's impossible to sometimes cover the first fees, and this is why we approved and signed a week ago an agreement with the European Council of Europe Development Bank. We signed a program for 3% per annum of interest rate, and they will be primarily oriented towards the rights of citizens. There are some uncovered, unregulated issues, and we need to regulate them, and that includes IDPs, internally displaced people from temporarily occupied territories. Regulatorily, it is difficult to find that any mechanisms to confirm the condition of as the report of being destroyed or being deprived of never more entitled to have some property, and we're working on that. And on the other hand, we need to provide them with resources for these categories of citizens to have access to the current state programs to deal with their residential issues. Concerning social infrastructure, we've got programs with the European Investment Bank, with the World Bank for the recovery and upgrading of the existing kindergartens, building up new ones, and together with the partners, we are already building up kindergartens, hospitals, and schools in frontline areas, including Chernihiv, Kharkiv, Oblast, where partners and ourselves are building kindergartens and schools, which is not a very fast process. Takes 1 to 2 years, going through bureaucracy and the lack of money when it comes to building up a new infrastructure. But they are also limited by shelters, by the need to build a shelter. Any object, any site will require that, and that's within the programs of not only the Ministry of Education, but also Ministry of Health. And this is how the safety and security of our employees is being provided for. Their primary need it is when it comes to the formal shelters and the availability whenever that's impossible to be underground. They're building up some modular constructions to provide some sort of conditionally proper and the best safety possible. Because when we spoke about some basic needs, I remember once about 1 year ago, 1.5 years ago, there was like opinion polling of those people, among those people that IDPs. So what would make you come back? As the most important factor. That's a job, employment. Unless I have a job in there, I won't return. Like refugees or internally displaced people that were coarsely made to abandon their properties, so they need to have a job, and that's what they report. The second question in that poll was social infrastructure. So when we mention like a job or employment, that includes the whole spectrum, because employment is mostly for the Ministry of Economy. That's their domain. But every ministry has its own domain, has its own competence, has its own zone of responsibility, which includes expanding the people's opportunity to find a job. And last week, as you know, there was a career exhibition at the exhibition center, and I was there in person, and I met some sort of versed people, boys and girls, of this in the pavilions, and everybody got interested, and they displayed possible careers, not only for youngsters like Ukrzaliznytsia, railways, post office, and all that thing, including infrastructure. Actually, there's a shortage of hands, there's a shortage of people, and any profession and a trade for an IDP, even if it's brand new, and a brand new trade, like forms of career where you can familiarize with the market proposals, and you will be able to find a place for yourselves there. So I think that the employment center is striving to expand on the educational and vocational programs so that the people can integrate themselves. I would like to wrap up pretty soon, but I would like to shed light on some sort of studies to find out more about people's problems, to more understand what financial tools I myself in our ministry can involve to resolve these issues. You know, I've mentioned it all in snatches because almost all it is very important. When I came up to Kiev and I got socialized, got integrated. That's very important when you're alone and there's a country right in front of you. So no matter what the state is doing, so everybody in their own place can do more. They can become a friend, they can become a family, they can form some sort of environment that will be later called home. Thank you very much, Ms. Serena, for a well-grounded introduction, for a personal story, and for what the ministry is doing. That was like an overview of review of what you're doing, and Renaissance Foundation systemically has to do with the discussion that's involved to understand the challenges of internally displaced people. And now Inna Pedluska is given the floor. Miss Inna, she's Deputy Executive Director of the International Renaissance Foundation. Thank you, dear colleagues. Thank you, Ms. Alessa. I On my way here, I recalled a story when my granny had told me when I was in kindergarten, and that was about my great mother. That was and the story was about World War II. Every war kind of leaves an impression of people, and people relocate not because they want it, but because they are compelled, internally displaced. When you are not ready, when you've got to actually quit everything and start from scratch. Every person has their own family or personal story of searching for a new place in this world, for searching for a new environment, a new community, and there's plenty of such stories with lots of things in common. That's always a victory over circumstances. That's the bravery. That's one's readiness to start things from the get-go, and new integration into a new community, sacrificing. That's the people that you're going along with, going hand by hand with. We need to find systemic solutions. Personal solutions is wonderful. Everybody does that, but we require systemic solutions for the International Renaissance Foundation, and we provide support to people that are internally displaced people. That means supporting communities, which is included in the scope of our strategic goals. Our priorities include resilience, recovery, and justice. We've got a very big strategy. Just a few quotes unquotes. You may read it on our website. The rest of it, we're gonna expand on those things, and this will be, first of all, number one element: investment in people. Thank you very much, Marina, for outlining. Providing an outline for us for our conversation, and also that includes our possibility potentially to accumulate, to strengthen networks and communities, to provide and involve, fetch resources, outline and pinpoint their problems and issues, and what we do to that, and what a particular person, a particular NGO or formation of people can do, what communities are doing already, what challenges the communities have, understanding that it's not the only problem in the community. In other words, what local self-governance can do, what central authorities can do. It's very important here to look into how we are achieving the putting together of our efforts, which is also includes fetching up resources, then providing conditions, then equality, equal participation in civil, in public life, and formats and priorities, setting formats within which IDPs will get support, access to high quality state services and social services, and also fair compensation. That will be indispensable. And altogether, we are working, and we want to make Russia pay for what they have done. There is a great deal of work what we can do about that for us in person, and it's very important for the communities to develop programs, policies, that they are well financed, both by Ukrainian taxpayers and also from supporting international partners. The support of international partners that we also have, not only resources but also incentivation to work within the community on a peer basis, work strategically, support new local leaders, men and women, for them to take on their part of responsibility, and that will be the best entry point within the general decision-making process, and also IDP councils, IDP boards. Lots of respect to those people that not just get together and support each other, but do it systemically. So we are aspiring to work as systemically as possible. That's part of our strategy. So when we talk about the results of the study, I think there's a few things that we want to get to the bottom of, which is systemicity, which is exploring the problem, getting an insight how it works in a particular community, what is being done, what will be done. Then, based on studies, that includes developing some sort of necessary wanted results. And the second part, um, I keep talking about this. I talk about this within different contexts, within different problems. Um, and it coincides sometimes. Like one part is systemicity, the second part is synergy and cooperation. Because we've already spoken that every problem is resolved only in such a way and provided that everybody uses their own responsibility, their own resources, their own tools, and can provide the best outcomes resolving the problem. So when I look at our banner and I see how many organizations have joined their efforts for us today to come up with a quality solution, thank you very much for your cooperation and synergy, and we're going to work together. Thank you. Thank you, Antonina. Thank you so much. Yes, synergy, cooperation, and support is very, very important. And we're going to try, when it comes to our studies, we will try talking through all those moments. And then we're going to talk on. And Mr. Maxim Tkachenko, Member of Parliament of Ukraine, who's an IDP and who is a co-chair of the Rights Temporary Commission just mentioned. Welcome, please, Maxim. The floor is yours. Welcome, dear friends, dear country people, dear friends. Lots of you are displaced people, and in my opinion, but I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. But moreover, I'm sure that there are some caring people here that are not IDPs, but unfortunately, there are less and less such caring people day in, day out. And it's the internally displaced people that unfortunately are now taken in this grief, this disaster in their life, this challenge. Somebody's been like that for 12 years, somebody 3 to 4 years. It's just to say that these particular people hopefully will keep that issue up on the surface to be visible. That's my hope, and we're hoping for those people. And that's like a reminder for the state and on this topic, on the theme. I'm not apart from authorities, and let's just understand that I'm sure that within this floor, and also there are plenty of people online here, participants, and you know the deal. And we don't have to tell you and talk about the power branches and who is doing what, like operational activities, like executive, and all those things. Some that the questions are to the authorities, to people that have to be involved in IDP cases, and there's lots of them, myself included. But I just wanna don't wanna zero what the state are doing, because when we start panning them, those executive things. Like people start catching up with that and saying it's all state treason, it's all failure, and so on and so forth. But when we talk about those figures, statistics that um, the state, or well, somebody with a subversive activity already. Oh, from the Minister of Regions. Okay, social policy. No, no, from not from that ministry. All right. Now, how much was done? So much as it was done by both the state, but the Ministry of Regions and Social Policy and all the other actors. I just don't want you to forget anyone, and not offending anyone. Okay, when I try to break the statistics down, and when I on IDPs, and I ask them an elementary question, nobody understands that 2 to 3 thousand hryvnias that are still being paid out by the state, and it's going out to more than 1 million people, just think of it, 1 million people that are still on that kind of benefit, that the state is still paying them, despite the budget deficiency and all the other war-related challenges and so on and so forth. But when we ask that question to the people, have you counted? Do you understand how many figures are in question, how much the poor state has spent on you? It all achieves, like it all reaches billions and hundreds of billions of greatness, and the people don't understand when you mention like trillions or billions, that this money is still necessary to make a draft law into a law, which is the most painstaking issue, one of the most painstaking problems and issues. So everyone of you regardless of the organization or foundation or whatever they represent, doing the IDPs, that's the top question that the people keep asking. Law 11-161, and when we start, why exactly it has not been signed, approved, not working, so the people don't want to get to the bottom of it.
When things are really working out, but it's not just paying lip service. So thank you very much indeed for extending this invitation to me. And today I have already spoken, and I can state that we have already worked with the organizers of today's meeting. So I very much thank you for everyone who has been engaged in the collaboration, and encourage you to get to know those that you haven't seen or met before. So thank you very much indeed, and I wish you a quiet, peaceful day today. Thank you, Mr. Maxim. Indeed, we will endeavor to be constructive. Something which is getting on our nerves a bit is something which is making us making us nervous today. A lot of organizations have been getting ready today. Today we are operating at the support of the Renaissance Foundation, and indeed, Mr. Maxim has said that 11 years, for more than 5 years, we have had 5 million IDPs. We don't know how many more people are outside Ukraine right now as IDPs. So it's the size of a small European country in population terms. The housing communities are also representatives in our midst today. We have representatives of IDP councils, public officials who work for different governments at different levels. And of course, there are lots of caring people in our midst, and this is so encouraging to speak us about all of the challenges that have already been mentioned in this introduction. So all of them can only be overcome with these joint efforts. And I'm honored today to represent to you the results of this study, which was conducted in the expert community as part through in-depth focus groups. And we involved representatives of NGOs, public and civil servants, and I know that a lot of people present with us here today were also part of this study. Thank you for committing your time to today's event. We aim not only to record different findings, because at the introduction you have already heard about that, but we also have to identify systemic points, as Ms. Inna has already spoken about that, in order to build a strategy and a strategic pathway in order to elaborate different solutions at different levels. So I'm kindly inviting us to see the presentation on the screen. Our study was about a consolidated advocacy stance concerning the IDP policy in Ukraine. And it contains a lot of rationale and a lot of foundational work undertaken by a lot of NGOs and CSOs, and I'm not going to mention them. Their representatives are here with us today. Next slide, please. So something we would like us to talk about is why, what the purpose of it is. We know that this year the strategy is running out. So much has been done in order to advocate for its approval, and this year sees the end of this strategy. Many NGOs are aiming right now to support the government in the development and shaping and elaboration of the new strategy. And the idea is that this strategy is not an end in itself. Perhaps we need to pursue some institutional things like approve different draft laws, but also measure our efficiency in terms of different deliverables. And in terms of our focus groups discussions, many people mentioned that. We mean to say that indeed there are lots of negative impacts because of how ministries are distributing powers between themselves. And there is an idea circulating that it hasn't helped the formation of a single government policy in order to shape and formulate effective decisions. So it's been 9 months since this distribution took place. Some little children have been born since then, but we are still talking about the necessity to develop common decisions and effective decisions at that. Of course, another thing that has had a negative impact, it was shrinking of the international aid, and this has helped impacted not only IDPs, but also the support of different government-owned institutions, the support of different experts, men and women involved in these processes. And we will be talking about that at length. All of you have been provided with handouts. These handouts have been funded by very kindly by the Renaissance Fund. We can touch them today, and we also will disseminate among you the results of our studies so that in your big advocacy campaigns you can also use the results of the study if you wish to. And the main ideas set out in the study is the lack of the clear coordination after the powers have been forwarded, the loss of institutional memory. We know that large-size teams, for a variety of reasons, nowadays have changed their place of work, and they cannot be engaged in the formulation of policies. The lack of sustainable channels of communication with IDPs. It's very difficult for us to speak about different kinds of experiences, and today we're speaking about the necessity to build new channels of communication. It's hard for us to communicate about IDP policies. Understandably, this is not the only problem that we have. We have a lot of people impacted by the war as such, with varieties of experiences. The displacement still continues. We have a lot of veterans, men and women. Lots of people have lost their jobs, but still, reverting to the first number I mentioned, we are such a huge number that it is the same as the size of a particular European country, the number of IDPs that must be mentioned. And the major challenges that we consider as the expert environment, we believe it's the gap between the policies and their implementation. And Mr. Maxim, in his introduction, he said the law is there, but for some reason it cannot be implemented nowadays. And that's exactly what I mean by the gap. The local level being overburdened because they don't have the local resources. This is, I have mentioned too, we have some housing, embracing communities. It's very difficult for them to work with IDP issues, operating there, merely their resources. And a lot of local government representatives in these housing communities spoke about that on repeated basis. And IDPs who have been engaged in military and civilian administrations. These councils have been established, these organizations have been established, but the fates of the people who are provisionally now the residents of these relocated civilian and military administrations, it's also a big issue. We have also spoken about the lack of actionable decisions that will contribute to the lives of IDPs. These are very complicated decisions for the government to take. It's a major challenge for Ukraine. Unfortunately, due to the continuation of the Russian aggression against Ukraine, the number of IDPs is such a number that it exceeds the entire number before that. In Colombia, previously, there was the greatest number of IDPs. Unfortunately, now it's Ukraine. And housing is the major priority, which all of the IDPs usually speak about. We will be hearing it from other organizations speaking about the results of their studies undertaken by their organizations. We instead would like to focus your attention on the lack of economic reintegration in these housing communities, especially when people are right now residing in temporary places of residence. We have some cases when people are residing like this for 11 years. This is a huge issue. It's a huge obstacle, especially in cities and towns which are suffering, like Kryvyi Rih, Kharkiv, which are suffering from the Russian shelling and bombardments. Would also like to draw your attention to lack of strong coordination between different humanitarian organizations. And in the first place, because nowadays the funding of humanitarian activities is shrinking in Ukraine, but we require instead a great deal of attention, especially in terms of different requests, at the core of which are IDPs. To see the continuation, extension of such programs. Would also like to draw your attention to legal uncertainty of the fates of the people that still reside in temporarily occupied territories. Also, attention is declining in terms of how IDPs are forced to live, expecting the liberation of these territories and the Ukrainian victory. We would like to speak in a concentrated way in our advocacy campaigns that it's possible to formalize the roles of the ministries, that they can take up their leading positions again, that they can spearhead effective decisions to provide the support and protection to IDPs in Ukraine. Would also like to speak about the fact that it's possible to resume the work of the Coordination Center involving the work of different NGOs who are professionals in protecting and enforcing the rights of IDPs, the IDP Councils, who have also announcing themselves to be as really effective tools, not only in terms of providing different kinds of advice. We would also like to speak about strategic advice via these IDP Councils and via these IDP Councils, because nowadays Ukrainians, men and women exhausted in the midst of IDPs, are losing trust in government authorities, and IDP councils are proving to be the only bridges that can communicate between them and the government. And fundamentally, to speak about strategic decisions, about the full cycle of implementing policies, all the way from ideation to piloting and to making it a consistent reality. It's also necessary to do the audit of local policies, because regrettably we fail to understand which approaches are best that may be helpful to different communities, community to community level. Right now it needs to prove useful. Implementing the standards of information sharing, it's indispensable nowadays, but because it intersects with the audit, with embracing new approaches. People keep migrating, people keep being displaced, keep moving away from the front line. And here information sharing would definitely be vital for us to shape the single approach in terms of the help and protection and of the interests and rights of the IDPs. It's necessary to look critically at the mandates of the relocated civilian and military administrations and develop an integration plan focusing on the people who live in temporarily places of residence. It cannot be like this, because temporary places of residence are not meant for people for a long time. Also, another recommendation, this is basically one of the final slides. I can see that all of you are looking in a very serious way at me. The strategy for young people also that have been relocated from temporarily occupied territories, very little, unfortunately, is being articulated in this regard. But these are those who will have to shape Ukraine, recover Ukraine after all of our territories have been reclaimed. It's absolutely necessary for us to align the strategy of communication to make sure that these young people will get back to Ukraine. So the actionable housing policy needs to take place in Ukraine with the help of well-shaped decisions and involving IDPs. And today, definitely someone who is a representative of the first IDP Council, I would like to speak not just on my own behalf, but on behalf of these thousands of IDP councils, that we require the support of the government in making this Council of IDPs councils, this congregation of IDP councils, be well formulated and well aligned, and we are expecting the regulation of the Cabinet of Ministers in this respect to regulate its activities, because at the same time all of these councils of IDPs and IDP councils, all of these people are working on a voluntary basis for most part. And this document, of course, is not about my speech, it's not about doing something on behalf of the Renaissance Fund, but we, of course, definitely are appreciative of the support of the Renaissance Fund, conducive of shaping the position of Impact Initiative, Rocada Foundation, Civilian Impact Stabilization Support Services NGO, Точка Доступу NGO, the Forum of Civilian Society Development NGO, Carpathian Agency of the Human Rights Vested NGO, Sustainable Development of the Government NGO. So thank you very much for investing in this study. Dear friends, we will be discussing it today at length, and we'll have lots of opportunities to hear the inputs from everyone who is present here. Thank you for your attention. Now we are a little bit behind time, so I'm inviting to set up the stage for the presentation to follow. And now we are going to launch into a panel discussion. We'll be speaking about the results of the studies conducted. So Katerina Pomazan is invited. She is the Senior Analyst of Impact Initiative, Oksana Savitska from Stabilization Support Services and a charity organization. So please, dear ladies, you are welcome to present the results of your first study. Oksana, the mic is yours. I hope the mic is on. Good afternoon, dear friends, men and women. I'm happy to present to you, and I'm honored to present to you this presentation together with Oksana Savitska. So we'll be speaking about the capabilities and challenges for IDP councils. I'm a bit lost in terms of our agenda. I don't know how much time we have on our hands. We'll try to be brief. Although you must understand it's a large-scale study. We have a great number of quantitative and qualitative information presented. So I will try to run through the key points of the first part, but of course you are provided with the possibility to access the full report, and we'll be speaking about the key findings, and then Oksana will take it on to speak about how these key findings were converted into real and tangible recommendations. So a bit about the way that we moved on. So we discussed this with more than 400 individuals. These were the heads or deputy heads of the IDP councils, and we proceeded the following way. We wanted to have well-representative data at the level of macro regions and at the national level, and we complemented this information also with quantitative and qualitative components. We had different discussions with representatives of IDP councils, representatives of IDP specialists, with both government and social sector representatives. So the first section of our report is about the profile of the IDP councils, and it's the richest in terms of the quantitative information. With the stabilization support services, we wanted to find out as much as we could about the status quo, the situation in these IDP councils. So you can see here the social and demographic makeup of such compositions, who are men and women. You can see who the chiefs are, their gender, belonging, professional characteristics. We were also able to see that some of the major barriers was the lack of experience, particularly legal expertise. And some of these IDP members, council members, said to us that when legal practitioners left the composition of these IDP councils, they stopped being effective as councils because it was impossible for them to operate without having a legal background. Also, you can see different indicators concerning their visibility in terms of requests that they make. We also spoke about the regularity of their meetings and submitting recommendations and proposals, and how active their members are in overall operation of these councils. So it's also necessary to mention that the major framework trouble is lack of distribution of roles within the IDP members, which means nearly every fifth council runs at the expense of just one or two people. So this is highly demotivational for these individuals. And in terms of quality, we learned that there are some councils that exist only formally on paper. And in fact, they are not doing any work whatsoever. And during expert interviews, we found out that this is a huge issue at stake, which is also exacerbated by the factor that there is no available reliable data concerning how many IDP councils are present. So we don't have the complete picture to go for the planning of the resources, to distribute these resources. And it's a huge challenge for the civil society sector and the public sector as such. So one of the barriers was also for other smaller council in terms of the frequency of the meetings. This relates directly to transportation services. It's difficult for people to commute from one village to another village, for example, because there is no public transport running, there is no useful or comfortable infrastructure, and internet access is also a huge trouble. So these are problem areas. They cannot operate as efficiently as they would like to.
And it's very straightforward. That's assistance to IDPs, improvement for the communities. The people said that they're getting satisfaction. They see positive results of their activity, and then we look into the demotivation. That the great problem will be a practical aspect of their efforts, like the council activity, not paying enough for the work, and as a result, other obligations that are vested on the person that they can hardly do, combining with the family as well. This is work and this is family. On the slide, it's very high in contents, quotation, quote unquote. I don't want to waste a lot of time, but on the whole, our report is rich in quotations. To me, it seems very good that the people have shared a lot of things on IDP Council, shared their pains and their proposals put forth. And the other part of the report is what actually includes the IDP activity. How do they perceive their mandate, their activity? And we found out that the most IDP councils, 60% back in 24, prioritized and spent the most time to provide direct assistance to IDPs. And on the whole, the most of them, 54%, are thinking that this is what the council should do on. This is the top priority job, and this is why we decided that this whole section will be focused on answering to the question, why is this trend of direct assistance provision exists, not looking at with the reservation that they will work more systemically on local policies. There's a lot of reasons to that. There's a reason that, for example, providing direct assistance is the result of here and now. Result is here and now. That gives incentive to people. This makes a hard job, but that does not require some special background like legal background. We've spoken already. And there's a great barrier, and it is that the councils often directly speak with IDPs, and psychologically it's very difficult to prioritize some long-term projects, systemic projects, when you see the particular faces of the people you meet and their families asking for some sort of very necessary help, and that concerns the communities, little communities, and there is no infrastructure or structure helping IDPs, and in those situations discussions, the IDP Council makes the only core of people helping IDPs, systemically and non-systemically. Under these conditions, the people opt for putting out a fire rather than building a new building after the fire. And these conclusion of ours have been proven by some sort of statistics on IDP Council, on local self-governance, and as the result, we can see we can see on the whole some sort of mismatch to the expectations on different levels when the council expected to give recommendations and proposals, but also should be made practical, should be practically implemented. They expect from the IDP Council an issuance of direct assistance, while the national level, they expect the national level players advocacy and systemic work on the politicians. And here we understand that the IDP councils, that situation with failed expectations, it makes some complicated condition where it is difficult to prioritize a particular activity because different authors expect different things as results. And now we're shedding light in more detail what those expectations from local self-governance in standalone section about their interaction, and I did not use that slide that it will be beautiful, but here comes the scenarios of different self-governance as they're dealing with the IDP Council. The first category is the degree of activity with the IDP Council, and then the level of interest of local self-governance bodies in policy implementation on IDPs, like top interest, less interest, and worse interest. So most councils indicate or demonstrate the fact that they're within a configuration of being an active council, and their interest is high. But one of the most important barriers that manifested itself most likely on the quality component was that when we have a situation where local self-governance authorities are not interested, then the IDP councils have no direct leverage of or impact on whether that will be looked at, revised, or will that be taken into account? So local self-government not providing some political will, then a council might be packed full with expertise, but in fact will not provide any practical, tangible results, which is a big problem. And this is probably the last slide. We looked at other different supportive authors of IDP councils, which makes like a hodgepodge of the main findings. Very quickly, I will go over each one of them. The first line item is non-governmental organizations and really are for real the biggest supportive element to IDP Council, and lots of councils mentioned that help from particular organizations, and that's most importantly, most often training, and very often they mentioned about mentorship programs that should be prioritized, long-term ones that would be aiming to provide practical hands-on lessons rather than theory. Also, an increase in platforms of interaction, of engagement should be provided for. We can see that in Rokada we have about the same percentage of that who never contacted with IDP councils, so councils remain fully isolated, and our respondents said that it's opinion exchange and the feeling of togetherness that motivates them most, and that they get inspiration from some very best practices shared. And also there's a problem about donorship support, very limited. Donors don't understand what IDP Council is, that it's not self-governance, it's not NGO, and not often they prioritize grant applications that would concern IDP Council activity, and that concerns policy monitoring and issuing recommendations, but not the practical implementation of projects. And also communication needs to be improved with the national institutions. That was very strongly related with the fact that the IDP councils never had a single representative or focal point of those councils on a national level, and as the result, those councils could not simply communicate about their big problems that they had faced locally and that required national solutions. Now it's over to Oksana already, and she will share in more detail about what we have converted into practical recommendations, and hopefully I wasn't long. Thank you very much, Katerina. I would like to thank you very much for making our dream come true, because our goal is actually, our real goal is to do such a study and get answers to the questions that we had, to confirm or negate, deny the judgments we already had coming up, because this community of councils, of IDP councils, is still young, and we've been working with them from the get-go, from the creation of them, and with many of them we work from the moment of initiative group formation, and we followed them up, but some results really struck us hard. They appeared very unexpected. We wanted to form recommendations for all the partners that one or another way had an impact on the activities of IDP councils. It is all addressed to the government and the Ministry of Development and the local self-governance bodies, including the IDP councils of different levels, and of course to international partners, donors, and NGOs. If we talk about the type of recommendations, then they are grounded on the conclusions that have been formulated based on the study results, and that contains a council composition revision, then efficiency and how to make them more active, how to form systemic efforts, how to improve communication and capacity building, and everything that we've heard from Katerina. And we wanted to form into some set of practical and real-life recommendations on how to overcome those challenges, or at least reduce them in weight. Now I want to go over a little bit on the most major recommendations about government. The first thing that comes to you are the provisions. The exemplary provisions need to be changed, changes to be made, and also the resolution approved. Then that will be upgrade of the coordination HQ, and coordination is something that the councils are missing on the central level, and also steady solutions should be issued on the national level with the councils acting locally to implement, and of course that will be true to life data, statistic data, and that will be not only accessing that data, but also how to collect it, how to process it, and provide quality data. And the next group of recommendations concerns the Ministry of Development of Communities and Territories of Ukraine as a central executive authority that is now responsible for state policy on internal relocation, displacement, and we would like the councils to take coordinating efforts on the level of government, central and state government, so that they help the IDP councils to overcome those most important barriers that demotivate a lot of things, and that's the creation of a staff unit, staff post, like an advisor to veterans, or aid to the veterans, to their council, but most importantly, that particular person should be should occupy that post and get remuneration for their activity. Communication between with the local self-governance, that's a barrier to be relieved. We need to monitor local self-governance authorities from time to time when it comes to their recommendations and proposals on for IDP councils and the results. One of the most important things, in other words, is a lack of criteria for the creation of IDP councils, and we can see they're being created formally even in the communities where there are no IDPs and must not be. So this is why we suggest that we develop certain criteria for the IDP councils to be highly required, highly demandable, so that they include IDP people within the local community, and also we have a IDP Councils Congress. That's an NGO, and it's still launching itself, and it requires support on the national level. And of course, I can't but mention about local self-governance bodies, because they're not the first ones, but they actually people and subjects interested in in those councils. We can't do without. What we can do without performance evaluation of the IDP councils, but that evaluation should be worked on by both entities. Also, next bullet is providing with technical means, with equipment. It's often out of pocket that they buy it for, and local self-governance bodies need to issue requests asking people, what do you need for your work? What do we need to get you to provide for your needs? That also includes access to information that was already mentioned today, and that will also includes helping providing legal support. That also includes providing a certain legal expert, legal advisor from a legal service, legal unit from the department, whatever, for them to actually work and amend recommendations and proposals. That also includes staff. IDP council staff or personnel, how many people with what qualifications. There might be just one person, as IDP might be none, but the situation should be avoided. We got certain provisions and standards, and hopefully that locally in the near future amends will be made, and it will get even more or less proper. That's also the willingness of the IDPs themselves. We need to provide awareness raising of what the organization is doing and what's the purpose of this consultative advisory body, so that the people understand their own expectations, and they be stipulated by ourselves. And the last thing to be said is that these solutions on a local level, they should not scare people off, or people should not talk about somebody underperforming and so on, or that a community has no initiative taken. Resettlers or maybe some sort of advisory bodies need to take part on that, in that to make things sufficient. If that council is not the right body, well, we need to liquidate it, or maybe change the format, maybe just put up an advisor on IDP, maybe some how else they should take participation in the life of the community. Thank you very much. Thank you, Stabilization Support Services, for the systemic support to IDP councils, for the unfolding it, and especially for making this particular study systemic. It was interesting to hear for me and for you the critical thought on the situation with the IDP councils. We idealize their efforts too often, too much, and what I myself have heard about for myself, that 60% of the councils are oriented and are specialized in issuing humanitarian aid, but which is not humanitarian organization. A council is not one. So we need to think about their experience, feasibility, wherever they're absent or too much present. So we need to work. We need to revise state policies according to our profile resolution. And Rokada Foundation will present its study right now. So welcome, please. I want to thank Renaissance again, because the vast majority of the studies that we are hearing about, they pertain to public resilience problem, in particular the one from Renaissance Foundation. Miss Irina, the floor is yours. Thank you very much. And it was done, the study within the strengthening of IDP councils in Ukraine, and we're thankful to Renaissance Foundation. And we kept track of IDP councils' efforts and the challenges that they have down the regions, and how to strengthen them and what pathways. If we talk about those councils, we have heard a lot of statistics today, and great numbers of people in the regions of Ukraine have no IDP status. That's a matter that will not be resolved in a year, 2 or 3, but the consultative advisory body, such a body as IDP Council that was created to support internally displaced Ukrainians, to provide systemic assistance, resolving their needs, to protect, stand for their rights and interests. There's plenty of time that's gone since the beginning of the war, and we understand that most Ukrainians have other different needs with the conditions of work for this consultative body changing. This is why we decided to analyze how those bodies or actors or councils work performance is seen in Ukraine. So there are 3 groups of respondents. The first group of respondents is the IDPs, the target audience. That's the first group, and we got them more than 1,000 people. The second category is representatives of councils from different regions of Ukraine, and we got them like 94. And the third group includes experts, which is people helping councils' efforts, people cooperating with them, which includes NGOs, foundations, monitoring foundations, local self-governance, volunteers, and other activists caring about problems and troubles of IDPs in Ukraine. Down the regions, you can see the distribution by macro regions, by the 4 large regions, and I will not provide it with more details because down the social networks you can download it with some analysis, the detailed things, and also we analyzed the legal framework, which is the background for the existence of those councils, some nuances as well. The first question that we asked our experts, the IDPs and local population, how do you look at your interaction with the IDP councils down the Ukrainian regions? You can see rather positive. This cooperation is assessed by 56.3% of those questioned, and also sometimes there is a feeling of tension in their statement, and which comes mostly from the people's stereotypic views that IDPs are getting more assistance, and the experts themselves say that the council itself is the important tool to overcome that kind of tension, and in particular to bust those stereotypical hoaxes in the regions of Ukraine. But if we talk about the activity of IDPs on a 10-point scale, the experts give it like 3.35 points, which is the average point, the average score. Yes, there are communities where they are more active, less active, depends on the region, depends on their own experience, and also subsequently the expertise that they got via the relocation and their public position before that. We can see barriers of participation, maybe a lack of trust, maybe for the councils, not enough motivation, not enough information, and so on. We can see actually the comments, the quotations, the statements from the respondents on how they characterize this block of question, and you can read the direct quotation.
Talking about the efficiency, this is rated at 3.6. Integration, we're talking about. Some of the peers have already spoken about that. Employment, access to education, housing, which unfortunately hasn't been identified here. It's also another important factor for integration, participation in different organizational and functional events. So this is something to meet the basic needs of the IDPs. Something which is also complicating the situation is the lack of proper understanding, because most of the time people think this is only going to last for a short period of time because people are of senior age or because resources are lacking in the communities, housing communities or hosting communities. So we asked our respondents how the activities of IDP councils improves the relations between IDPs and hosting communities, and the majority of them saw a very positive impact of them, that these councils bust myths and stereotypes. They help to establish very good contacts between the local residents, IDPs, and local authorities. They become bridges, enabling to build very good relationships between Ukrainians coming from these three cohorts. So information about the councils. We asked about the IDPs about that and local residents, whether they know that an IDP council is operational in their communities. So over 60% of the respondents, they said yes, but it's important to speak about what's missing from the slide. The majority of the people interviewed know very superficially about these councils, but they know very little about the initiatives proffered by these councils, about the activities undertaken by these councils. But those who are familiar with these councils, they use the official site, media, accounts, and different events organized by such IDP councils. We also asked our respondents about the pathways to intensify communication for them to understand the councils better and what the operations are. So they said that different means of communication need to be applied, various communication tools in addition to social networks, or adapting them, suiting the age groups that the councils interact with. It's improving the feedback, active application of different digital channels, and holding regular meetings with council members. We basically saw that in a lot of IDP councils, young people and senior people are very badly presented. Better balanced makeup of such councils are usually at regional or city or town councils, but in rural areas, usually the makeup is very distorted. Young people may be badly informed, which means that they're not going to be engaged in the activities of the council, which means that they definitely need to be engaged more. Trust in the councils. We asked our respondents if they trusted these councils, and we saw that the majority of them do trust these councils. More than 45% of the respondents said that they rather trust, and under 12% said that they trust these councils completely. And this pyramid indicates different factors that impact this trust, and different factors contributing to the trust forged between the hosting communities and the IDPs. So this is about collaboration with IDPs, charity foundations, tangible deliverables of the operations of these councils, participating in the vested interests of the IDPs, protecting their rights. Anticipations, it's also an important factor that a lot of our respondents mentioned, who were both IDPs and local residents and experts themselves. We divided this into three blocks. The first thing which is expected from the council is a systemic monitoring of requests and needs of the IDPs, collecting data about housing needs, access to services, level of security, employment, education. So all of the factors that enable someone to be successfully integrated within their hosting community. Next is protecting the interests of IDPs via work with the local politicians, programs approved at the local government level, analyzing them and providing recommendations and proposals for their improvement. And thirdly, providing information and consultation services through training activities, roundtable discussions, online and offline activities. How the efficiency of IDP councils is assessed. We also questioned them whether these councils perform their tasks effectively, and 54% of the respondents asserted positively in response to this answer. We also speak about different impediments, and I saw a lot in common with the people who have spoken before me. There are some barriers that obstruct the way of IDP councils. It's a lack of resources that we will be talking about more, low efficiency of operations, which is to do with the lack of communication and information about the councils, lack of regular needs, monitoring, and requests of the Ukrainians IDPs, and of course weak communication, the results of communication and the operations of these councils, 55.5% have identified that the results are visible, but this impact is insignificant. But we see a lot of positivity because the councils are helping to make changes within the housing communities and hosting communities, and the IDPs can see that. Concerning participation in different events, one of the core activities undertaken by IDP councils within their hosting communities. So training activities, meetings, informal communication, advisory services, were the most popular things mentioned, and the reasons not to participate in the activities were written off to lack of information or inconvenient time for the people to, especially the people who are employed. They complained about that reason. Quality. You see that half of the respondents said that the quality of these events was significant. More than 57% said that it was 4 out of 5 points. We also asked our respondents to answer the question whether they have ever interacted with the local authority representatives via these IDP councils, and if IDP councils have helped them to tackle any of their personal issues, and 34.5% have never reached out to them. However, 29.6% have had this experience, and this experience was positive. It wasn't reflected on the slide, but people did confirm that the councils helped to resolve their needs, and those needs were met. And the most common ways to communicate, these are meetings, consultations, personal requests, applications, etc. The structure and the makeup of councils. We asked them to complete a short application form, and we were able to see the age and gender composition, which was very similar to the previous presentations. Predominantly women are members of such councils. People aged 25 to 39, so people under 25 are misrepresented or underrepresented. And we also have a great chunk of people who are aged above those factors. So disbalance in the makeup of the councils, especially when we speak about rural areas. Senior people and young people are better represented in urban areas. And people with disabilities are also underrepresented. So obstacles in the way of the council. So we asked the groups of respondents to speak on behalf of IDPs, and they said about the lack of material, about how difficult it is to unite members. They also said that people are not so active, and a lot of people simply drop out, and it's very difficult to make the councils fully functional. Representatives of the IDP councils, they also replied, and they spoke about personnel turnover. This was very similar in many respects to the answers provided by IDPs themselves. Everyone keeps talking about the lack of resources. So experts, different experts have spoken about the passivity amongst the members of these IDP council members, low information, dropping out of the members, and some internal difficulties that may also arise in the operations of these councils. So our recommendations. We have a lot to offer, and in the study that you will be able to read and have an access to if you follow our QR code, we have suggested quite a few recommendations, and we have grouped them by key topics. First, it's enhancing communication, a possibility to speak to different age groups, to speak both to young people and people with disabilities via different communication channels, because we did this content analysis and we saw that in some communities there is just information on a site as an information point about setting up this council, nothing else. Some of them, they had information about the establishment of the council. Some of them didn't even have such an announcements. Some of these councils are very low in terms of their enthusiasm or activism. So they simply have to change the format of communication, involve other ways of communicating, social media, and ensure sustainability. And in this respect, we say that we have to intensify the activity between NGOs, international foundations, businesses, local initiatives within the communities themselves. IDP community initiatives is not only about hearing them, but also about monitoring the operations on a consistent basis, monitoring their needs and wants via different polls, meetings, and of course ensuring information about their advocacy campaigns, because one of the important factors in the work of these IDP councils is their vision of their programs and activities, which will also be greatly impactful on the decisions undertaken by local governments. And involving the IDP council is essential in this respect. And of course, we suggest monitoring the efficiency of these IDP councils on a periodic basis, which means which is supported by a special questionnaire, and councils themselves will be able to see for themselves when they answer the questions in this questionnaire if there are any gaps in their activities, if they need to involve mentors, international organizations, or experts in their support. And this will definitely enable them to be more flexible and to improve cooperation and vouch the support of other partner organizations, partners, etc. And for you to see this information in greater detail, you are invited to follow these QR codes. Ms. Irina, we thank Rokada for the study and you for your presentation. I have basically taken down the note that about 50% of the respondents know about the operations of IDPs, and about the same number of people believe that they are efficient. So this speaks in favor of the high level of trust. Now I'm inviting our next speaker to present. We'll only have 10 minutes for that, so please mind the time. Mr. Alexei Kovalenko, Forum Rozvedku, Forum of the Development of Civil Society, analyzing different provisions for the IDP activities, analyzing the capacity and activities of IDP communities. So I'm a representative of this organization and the chief of the board. Our organization has been in operation since 1998. We enforce the rights of Ukrainians via the development of digital democracy, participation tools under the conditions of global challenges. First of all, probably I would like to thank everyone, man and woman, who has been involved in the operations of IDP councils, because these are the Ukrainians who, I suppose, shoulder the human potential and capacity of our communities, regions, and the entire country. And there are such representatives in our midst nowadays. They're with us here online, so let us give them a big round of applause, because we have been speaking for an hour about these people, and all credit should go to them. With the support of Renaissance Foundation, our organization has been operational in 6 regions of Ukraine, in different regions of Ukraine. So our activities lie in manifold operations, but as we speak today, the focus is strengthening the capacity of IDP councils. And I'm very much appreciative of my peers who have just presented the results of their studies, and it made me think back to how we began to work with our respective communities. The talk itself is really provocative because we speak about the monitoring and efficiency of the IDP Council's operations. I remember the first time when we went them to visit them, the first person who said something to us, she said, "Are you here to control us? Do you know that we are working on a voluntary basis? Do you know that money is already missing and we have families and work?" So when I saw 40% presented here in slide 1, they reflected this picture properly. But I said that we were here on behalf of the institution, the Council of IDPs, and still we wanted to see some results. And I thank Rokada NGO, who summarized and spoke about the how we are going to measure the results of this advisory bodies. So first of all, let us be introduced to these 6 councils and the councils of IDPs within these communities, hosting them. They have been in operation for 2 to 3 years right now. They have their operational plans, unfortunately not approved officially, but they are there anyway. In fact, in this period of their operations, they have conducted up to 10 working meetings, and interestingly, they have considered at least 10 issues, so on average 1 issue per 1 meeting. We wanted to determine what tools councils of IDPs use in order to protect and enforce the rights of the IDPs who arrive in their communities. Unfortunately, they do not use public consultations, and proposals which they submit, unfortunately, do not go through this tool. So they simply use the instrument of their own meetings. Along with that, as Rokada has said it properly, local governments are clearly in support of everything that IDP councils have to offer. Up to 10 proposals submitted have already been supported. And in answer to the major question whether these proposals were of strategic importance for the hosting communities, because we're trying to integrate people, IDPs, into hosting communities. It's impossible to do that without a proper strategy. Unfortunately, IDPs couldn't give the answer to this question, and we tried to help them with that. What was in the focus of our activities? We were tasked with researching and exploring the legal framework that IDP councils are guided by, and we researched and explored that not only for ourselves, but our hypothesis was that everyone is busy, there's very little time, too many challenges, and people cannot take much time when working within the framework of these councils. So they need to be provided with some kind of a tool that will enable them to assess their operations, see what the gaps in their operations are, and utilize the opportunities offered to them here and now, not in 1 or 2 years, but just within 4 months, for example. So we were forced to come up with a methodology to analyze the legal framework which the IDP councils are guided by, and you can see there are 7 indicators shaped and offered. From scoring them on a basis from 0 to 7, we developed a very simple table, and we invested these 7 indicators, and then we began exploring everything based on that. And we identified that, provisions. Are there any KPIs concerning the efficiencies of such councils? They simply say that if less than 60% of different decisions and ideas offered by such councils are not implemented, that they need to be dissolved, but it's no good. Something else which is suffering is the element of publicity. When the councils themselves cover their activities on their sites, there are no sections dedicated to, I'm talking about the sites of local activities, no sections on these sites dedicated to local IDP councils, so people have no information about them. And not a single indicator is there in response to the question how effective these councils are. Therefore, having seen the 6 provisions within the regulation on IDP council operations, so we provided our own conclusions, and we say that there need to be 3 key KPIs: the number of sittings, number of public consultations, number of propositions submitted, etc. We would really like them to change the makeup of these councils, because in many situations these are the people who are represented by local public officials. So all of this took us 4 months. We were expecting local authorities to change, and unfortunately no good has come out of it. And you can question me, so Alexei, do you think that after legal framework is regulated we will get any positive results? I definitely don't stick to such an opinion, but local council, IDP council members think differently too, because now that we have demonstrated to them a different roadmap and different opportunities that they can utilize right now, you cannot imagine all of the 6 IDP councils have conducted these public discussions themselves without any experts. They counted the number of proposals, they submitted proposals themselves, they approved strategic plans for integrating IDPs, they advocated in favor of that in 3 communities. They sat down and developed these plans for integrating IDPs, and right now we'll be applying for donor support for these operations. So I am urging all of the IDP councils to do exactly that. This is a very simple tool to indicate where the housing community is opening up different possibilities for you. So scan this code, and I hope I have met my time.
This study was, as you have seen, a different kind compared to the previous presentations, but it was very important because it actually helps us critically look at the documents that the IDP councils work with. And it's not as for internally displaced activists, men and women, but as people that are capable enough to contribute to efficient political decisions and how to make them more efficient. I am urging you to work on that issue. Please scan the QR code for that, and the Renaissance Foundation is trying to make those studies important, and this is why we have developed a tool that will contribute to efficiency of IDP Council performance. There's a number of studies, one of which will be presented by Ms. Marina from the Carpathian Agency of Human Rights, and the study is called an evaluation of the needs of communities that are geographically hard to reach. I'm Maria. It's okay, but it's okay. It's fine. Most importantly, I was very concerned. Okay, just 10 minutes of my presentation. I will try to fit into the framework time frame, and I will wander off the presentation by shifting the focuses within the context of the previous presentations, because the results of our presentation are not about an analysis of IDP Council performance, but it's rather about the fact how we strengthen the possibilities and capabilities of IDP councils in the Zakarpatska Oblast in 4 communities. In other words, where it wasn't us evaluating, but we gave them workshops and trainings just to understand, outline an idea of IDP Council. It's not about the issuance of humanitarian aid, because I have colleagues working for some councils, so I've got experience, and now there is a difference. We've got a small community. We perform regularly, we talk through different problems and issues, and we share success stories, how we compelled local self-governance to make changes to their local acts. So we're trying to move in that direction, but that's not for all the communities. Yes, we helped the councils to study and learn and to evaluate the needs down the community according to the methodology recommended by the ministry, and there was no proprietary methodology. We just tried to pick up the right keys of communication when it comes to dealing with the councils, and we chose the different ones. Velika Bishkevska community, that's a distant, far away mountain area, 5 hours by car from the city of Uzhgorod. That's the very edge of our oblast, from one edge to another edge, and it's puts together a lot of scattered community down the rayon with some IDPs. Irshavska Council on the level of cities, then Beregovye and Rakhivtsi on the level of rayon. So different councils with different approaches, with different complexities of operations. We have statistics that in the end, you've got a QR code, and given the most of you are experts, these statistics from the slides will not give you anything, because you can scan the code, but the code has a hyperlink to our website that includes all the presentations with all the statistics that you can read, and it's got a breakdown on every gramada, on every community. We taught them. We really had to push them and shove them, and we taught them on what that assessment was, and there were like 3 to 5 people as per council that had to go a long distance sometimes, and some took part, answered those questions on paper, some electronically, but I liked it very much that those matches really caught fire eventually. So, based on their trainings and their attempts to act, they reapproved the compositions, the personnel of the council. Now, it's chaired by an IDP woman. And they used to be a self-governance council before doing nothing. So um, I will browse through the presentation. I will talk not about the figures, but some extra information. You can see Bichkivska communities. There are also problems accessing preschool education, and there was a session of the Irshavska City Council because looks like there is no problem, and the council says that those facilities should work up until 5 to 6 o'clock. But that was a city council, but the level is of countryside now because the caretakers have to go home at 4 o'clock, and they need to do something for a living, and the IDP women cannot get employed, get a job because they will have no place to leave their child. And that was actually the efforts to start moving and set goals and discussing. During the first council session, we saw that the vast majority of those rayons and communities, the IDPs, are coming from the regions, front lines that they got no place to go back to. Like 80, you can see 89.6, almost 9%, 90% from Irshavska community. For the others, that statistics reach some figures. Also, IDPs from either completely occupied or everything destroyed, demolished. And so it appeared that we needed to address that problem because the people will not go back, and they're not internally and temporarily displaced. They're displaced forever, maybe. And with the other regions, that is the case as well. In Zakarpattia, we have 109 IDPs that are certified and are booked on the register. Some guys are not yet on the register, and the people Chernivtsi are refusing to take the trains with the evacuated, and we take them all. We receive them all. So we got inflows and we got other different issues. And just to say, then on Rakova, I would like to show you. It is not only IDP needs, but we'll also looked into the issue. And it was important to see by how much the IDP councils are ready to get going, get cracking when it comes to work, how much they are versed and how much they face discrimination. 40% of the respondents said that yes, it happens in the Rakiv. Then 41% said that is in Vershavsky region, and 31% in the other. Then they said they were facing discrimination. That was something they needed to work for, especially in the remote communities. In Uzhgorod, as the oblast center, there will be less discrimination, but when it comes to the remote areas, that's bigger. Also, we need to overcome them. And 31% of the IDPs in Rakiv rayon want to take part in their community's activities, while 27 don't want to do it. 11 find it difficult, and 24 is already way too much, plus 18. That's almost a half of them. That's more than 40%. That's the contingency that the councils need to work them through, like to fetch them, to train them on how they can be part of the council's activity, and so on. Recommendations result from those problems. Housing activities to IDPs, that all comes through all the presentations. All you have seen here in snatches. You can read a full report on this QR code, and you can scan. You can sort it out by community, and it's got like 15 pages as per community. So thank you, and I have fitted my time span. Thank you very much, dear Marina. You can scan the QR code, And thank you for your Carpathian experience. Thank you for the experience of the different organizations from different corners of the country for the more comprehensive picture of the situation with the IDPs and the councils and how the system is functioning. And we got one more presentation, and we should gladly hear from Alessia Vorontsova, who is running the NGO called Steady Development of the State. Who are behind the schedule because this is why that's the penalty. They're switching the microphone off, and we've got like 10 minutes presentation. One more. Hear me? Right. In reality, our team did not do some sort of pure study as is. All those statistics are by themselves popping up. Were popping up during the course of our project. Thankfully, to the Renaissance Foundation, it was 6 months that we spent in Cherkasy soil, and we were evaluating the capabilities of IDP councils in 4 rayons of Cherkasy Oblast, Zvenigorodsk, Zoloton, Nisha, Uman, and Cherkasy itself, and to understand what quantity, what number, what the quality was for the IDPs. There is some sort of introduction, background information to the picture, just to say, like by 100, even 1,000%, all the scope of issues and problems, they do match the previous presentations. They do coincide. So I am very grateful to the brave men and women that provided us with those statistics. So our statistics are that since the beginning of the full-scale invasion in the Cherkasy Oblast, which had a single database from the Ministry of Social Policy, and it registered 136 and more, slightly more people as IDPs. Distribution was mostly of origin of them was mostly from the Kiev Oblast. No, I can't switch it over. So yes, you can see the pictures. So the majority of them came from Kiev, Oblast, then Donetsk, then Kharkiv, and then Lugansk. Those are the highest statistics in where they come from. Those Ukrainians that settled down in Cherkasy area. The numbers that were left afterwards, they are different. 96,000 almost, and that's by some people more. You can see pensioners, retired. You can see children. You can see a great number of people. But you should understand, if that's not retired, not children, that means able-bodied people that want to work, that need a job, that need a residence. Then there's another figure, and that was actually accruing and accumulating that and getting assistance to live, to reside in Cherkasy area. 23% in total. They get at least some assistance, but here comes the need of the people to rise and require some sort of integration. Within the integration of the community, require some assistance from the community. There are 35 places for temporary residence, and there is 1,700 in total. They're all full up. Very good conditions as we inspected them, as we saw them, but you can see that that makes a very small amount, according to the great number of people that came to that Cherkasy area, Oblast. There is a need for residence, higher need. During the project, we monitored those purposeful programs that are existing in the communities, and you can see that in the Cherkasy Oblast, there is like 6 communities, and there is a number of purposeful programs, targeted programs that are supportive of IDPs, resettlers, and there's a program called Turbota Care. It is very generic, and it's like the underlying one that incorporates all those sections that are necessary for the IDP. Now, concerning the IDP councils, we actually worked on supporting the IDP Council efforts, and it was important to understand how many of them and of how many people, 66 communities in total, but 17 councils down the communities, plus there are 4 rayon ones and 1 for the oblast, 1 oblast level. And here, the colleagues have already mentioned some poor, insufficient communication between those IDP councils themselves, between the IDP people and local self-governance bodies. Despite the fact that the IDP councils were created running under those administrations of the regions, but there is a problem not having enough insight of your problems, of your needs, and not enough highlighting that those needs. Thanks to our project, those efforts rose in activity on the websites, meaning but there is a reluctance to highlight information which was mentioned already multiple times. So the councils actually ventured to create their own Facebook pages, and then via the Facebook pages, via the social networks, they spread the information about their activities. And the scope of issues here is not crucially different from what was said in the previous presentations, but I just want to reiterate again, it's not the right sequence, it's not by importance, but still we have an issue in Cherkasy. The scope of issues is basically the same. There is no centralized vertical for coordination of IDP councils. There is no mentorship. There is poor training of the communities, of the councils and their activities. Resolution 7. 812 speaks of poor control exerted by the state on the IDP Council performance, and too formal approach to the formation, as lots of councils were created on a need-to-be basis. There's a resolution going out. Every official knows you need to do something in the wake of that document, because they form councils, but 30% of those councils created are not functioning, either not functioning or very little functioning. So the absence of a state booking mechanism for registering IDPs, just for us, for the councils, myself am a member of the Oblast Cherkasy Council. So we need to understand how many people, what age brackets, what their needs are. This is why we need that centralized mechanism from the state for this kind of booking. These are our recommendations, our proposals, like methodological coordination should be created, and that's not a power vertical, but that will be like a vertical of methodological assistance chaired by the Congress of IDP Councils with their coordination headquarters. I fit in my time span. Thank you very much for your outcomes, and hopefully, yes, all the presentations will be collected in one package. Thank you very much for the Cherkasy experience, for your presentation. Just to remind you, this is the partnership with the International Renaissance Foundation, with NGOs, with civil society organizations protecting IDPs. Thank you very much, dear presenters, for your presentations, and you're all welcome for coffee, for discussion, and 15 minutes. And please be back in 15 minutes. And we got another interesting panel cutting down of financing and their the influence of that impact on IDP organizations' functionality. Dear speakers who have spoken today, you're invited to a group photograph. Have a nice coffee, and for those who are online now, please do not get
Колеги, я попрошу логістичну команду, яка підтримує захід, принести воду і склянки сюди. Колеги, дякую, що повертаєтесь, і принагідно запрошую. Бачите, вже спікерки і спікери повертаються в залу, гості повертаються в залу, спікери і спікерки займають свої місця. У нас сьогодні серед спікерів і спікерок Владислав Закаблук, заступник директора департаменту, начальник відділу прав внутрішньопереміщених осіб у секретаріаті Уповноваженого Верховної Ради України з прав людини. Дякуємо, що долучились. У нас Підлузька Інна, заступниця виконавчого директора Міжнародного фонду відродження. Пані Інно, запрошуємо вас в панель.
Deputy Director of the International Renaissance Fund, Victoria Zakabluk, Impact Group, Lydia Kuzmenka, the advisor in legal issues at the Office of the UN Commissioner for Human Rights, and Yulia Kaplan, the chief in the Department of the Strategic Research Institute, and she is an analyst at the organization called The Idea of Change. So colleagues, thank you for coming back. We will be very much appreciative of those who will be rejoining us soon. I have a lot of handouts in my hands. Things are dropping on the floor. So first, in order to begin our today's discussion, I would like to thank all of the experts who are willing to participate in this talk. And the first question goes to you, Ms. Ina. You have a great deal of advocacy experience. Renaissance Foundation is one of very few donors that have been helping the participation of IDPs on a systemic basis, especially for public advocacy. So given different studies, a lot of research done in different corners of our country, the development of such partnerships at the level of communities, how do you see that given the studies at the level of the government, regions and community, especially now that the funding is shrinking? How much does that deserve in terms of the scope of attention? It's a very large question. How many minutes do I have to delve into it? Okay. In very basic lines. So let me begin, and then we will get back to some of the ideas. I'm very much appreciative of all of the studies that have been presented today in an overarching way. We have an opportunity to see the issues that we are faced with and different ways in which they can be handled. And understandably, it will take not just one way to handle all of these problems at different levels, at different community, for different problems, the scope of different ways will have to be enacted. We have been working for a long time with NGOs, supporting NGOs. Basically, this is our core mission to provide opportunities for the societies to become more open and to make NGOs more powerful. So we are advocating for reforms and rights, different kinds of environments where rights can be enjoyed and enforced. So when we look at all of these studies that have been presented, the most important thing, of course, is to have the follow-up. Of course, we have a lot of recommendations to hear from them at the end. But as for me, now it's critical to collect all of these developments and try to look at them from the standpoint of the tools and the ways to communicate all of these recommendations. Who are we offering them to? Who will be working with them? What are the resources for us to implement all of these recommendations? Because at times we happen to agree with the issues. Recommendations are definitely right. Goes without saying, you have probably heard it, that no communities, no authorities or the government officials will object to these recommendations, but the basic questions that emerge are who will proceed and how will they proceed developing these recommendations. So basically we, as the Renaissance Foundation, we offer it to different CSOs and NGOs to look at all of these things in a comprehensive way, to utilize the resources and the strengths the different CSOs have in order to cover at least part of the way that can be covered outside public institutions, having the resources that they have at their disposal. But at a certain point, of course, we become aware, yes, of course, we agree with the recommendations, but the question emerges, who's going to work on these recommendations? You have also spoken about the shrinking financial resource. It's both yes and no. We understand it's a major challenge. A lot of analysis has been done concerning how the environment is changing and how impactful this is, that a lot of American taxpayers' money is not available for our programs anymore. However, there are other channels of activity, and Ukraine is preparing for EU accession. And this preparation means that it's not only the government is getting ready, not only the national level is getting ready, but every community is doing so. And that's why all of the resources need to be allocated to ensure this preparation and preparedness. The idea is whether we have the access to all of these channels, whether these tools have been honed enough, if they're friendly to civil society organizations. And again, we get back to the idea what the foundation is trying to do together with its partners, forging all of this chain all of the way from understanding the problem, delving deeper into every bit of this problem, trying to understand what toolkit will have to be applied every step of the way, and all the way to capabilities. Because as for me, this is always a very, very important thing to consider. Money is there. Maybe it's not directly addressed to the CSO, but we have to grow our ability to access these partners, to be able to interact with other participants in this interaction. I mean, the state, the government, towns, cities, communities, entrepreneurial environment, to make sure that we can harness at least part of these resources and to understand how we are going to distribute them. And all of these studies are valuable. We have to put them all alongside each other to see where we have gaps, where these gaps still need to be fixed, and what sequence we are going to tackle all of these gaps. So in summary, of response to your very proper question, it's all about the clear understanding of the priorities for our advocacy. What is it that we are seeking at this stage, proceeding to the next? What do we want to happen next? On the shoulders of what we are achieving right now, how will that enable us to keep moving? What approach are we exercising in order to build these interaction chains, how we supply that with resources, which resources are available, etc. And lastly, a lot has been said a lot about localization. You must have heard about it, right? When we speak about humanitarian assistance, localization is one of the words that keeps banging on and on, which is about a possibility offered to Ukrainian organizations to do what they basically do, taking on themselves this key role and becoming one of the core drivers of the process, which unites the understanding of the problem with the participation of the people on whom the delivery of the solution to this problem heavily depends, and the resources available. So once again, this capacity to provide for tackling the issue. We are serious people. We know how to forge solutions. We know how to work comprehensively. We are ready for interaction with other stakeholders. We understand what resources are available and necessary. So we, as the Renaissance Foundation, are attempting to do that jointly with the CSO organizations. Thank you, Ms. Ina. I wanted to say I'm in favor of you. I will be voting for you. So this sustainable support, which is very well felt by us, representatives of the civil society, thank you for that. You have spoken about this chain. And in the study which I was honored to represent today, it spoke about the lack of institutional memory. So to follow up on this lack of institutional memory, I would like to address this question to Vlad, because he's responsible for the institutional memory, because your career started with work at the ministry, then you began to work for the Office of the Ombudsman of Ukraine, and this office has to play a very key role in monitoring of the rights of IDPs, and today is probably the leading role, because you are publishing reports on the situation, on internal displacement, the tendencies in this area. And my question to you is, do you see in your reports, maybe you are recording it anywhere, these trends about the curtailing of the programs targeting the IDPs in Ukraine, which are being reformatted under the title of the new residents of communities. So from your perspective, how can the balance between the legal equality and de facto recognition of this category of IDPs should look like? Thank you very much for your question. Concerning the institutional memory, you probably nailed it down, basically, when you said that we have been working with the topic of IDPs for years and years. I have to process this topic on a daily basis, and this has always been the case for me, but when I caught myself thinking that I've been working on that for 9 years, it was daunting. Hopefully, in the nearest future, we will be able to resolve the issue of the armed aggression to make sure that people can get back to their home places and places of their original residence. Concerning curtailing different programs targeting IDPs, well, the first point to make is that clearly shrinking of the assistance donor aid to support IDPs and the whole impacted population, it's a key issue because but for their support, we couldn't be holding today's event, and the line ministries dealing with the protection of IDP rights and who deal with formulating the policy of dealing with the needs of IDPs. They're guided by the findings of international organizations, UN agencies. Those agencies are not, I mean, these ministries cannot undertake such studies themselves. So on the basis of these studies, decisions are taken in order to shape the policies of IDP councils, for example, as it is here the topic of today's discussion, to ensure their development. A lot of time has taken place since the moment the module provision about the IDP councils was approved at the national level. And clearly, during the first 2 years, transformation usually takes place. And secondly, in this time, we have been able to see lots of intricacies of how local authorities are implementing these legal acts. And clearly, they have to be framed for them to see how to discharge their duties more effectively. And by the way, this is the issue which was articulated concerning the need of establishing a separate job within local communities where certain officials will be directly dealing with supporting IDP councils. So this is really critical because the majority of IDP councils are rendered efficient only when they are supported by donor organizations for the sake of their development. And if IDP council members or the chairman or chairwoman of this council is a member of another organization, then the efficiency is ensured. But if the makeup of these organizations is ensured by the people who do not deal with ensuring and enforcing the rights of IDPs, then of course their operations will be lacking. So now let's get back to your question. Concerning shrinking of the costs of the Ukraine state, we understand that the housing of IDPs, this was 2.6 million allocated into last year, and a lot of the rules were changed concerning the number of people who could be eligible for receiving this allowance. So we are creating a new mechanism for that. We are ensuring a subsidy for them to rent housing right now. And I don't know, I'm not ready to assess the efficiency of that, but unfortunately it hasn't been rendered as efficient as the society has been expecting it to be. Of course, it's being amended, information campaigns are ongoing, and we are very much hopeful that this mechanism will prove useful, actionable, and people eventually who lost these subsidies will be able to take advantage of this new tool. Nevertheless, now we are having the situation when the number of IDPs is stable, but the number of the people who are getting monetary allowances has decreased, and the number of international organizations who run different polls in the midst of IDPs keep saying that cash assistance is one of the major types of livelihoods that these people are living at the expense of. So we see the situation that international organizations have to keep implementing projects which target providing IDPs with cash assistance and different possibilities for winterization. So it's critical to ensure the extension of such projects. At the beginning of 2022, at the very beginning of the full-scale invasion, multiple international organizations came to Ukraine to help in humanitarian regard, but the funding unfortunately is diminishing, and we need to make sure that it continues. It's so important for us because without the support rendered to CSOs and NGOs who are helping IDPs in Ukraine, the state itself, the government itself, will not be able to provide the full scope of the services which are being delivered to the affected population, ranging from legal aid to all of the other forms and kinds of services. Concerning cash assistance, the position of the commissioner ever since the beginning, when the Ministry of Social Policy began to amend its policies, we still stick to the position that this cash assistance needs to be issued to the people until the very end of martial law in Ukraine. Thank you, Vlad. Thank you, colleagues, for your response. After the first round of questions, we will have an opportunity to hear from you, from our audience. Those of you watching us online, please contribute your questions or comments online. And we will also be articulating your questions to our panelists. At least we will try to do it effectively. Thank you, Vlad, once again for touching upon the cash assistance, monetary help, shrinking funding in this regard. And I would like to approach Ms. Lydia. So you're an agency of the High Commissioner for Refugee Matters. We know that you are keeping this at the top of your agenda, supporting IDPs with cash. And your agency has been helping IDPs throughout all of your operations, of your presence here in Ukraine. And do you see that the applicable policy of Ukraine is in line with all of the principles of ensuring that IDPs can have accessible housing? I would like you to target the people who are right now placed here in Ukraine, particularly people with no registration. Thank you very much for your difficult questions. Probably I will make a step back and start from afar. My organization, the High Commissioner for Refugee Matters, talking about IDPs, regardless of their place of stay in Ukraine, keeps speaking about the implementation of long-term decisions right from the very beginning of displacement, which means that if regulated evacuation begins to take place, people have to be informed about where they are headed, not for 3 days, but for a longer time, what will be happening to them during that time, how evacuation will be unfolding for them, which means there is a need to ensure honest and transparent communication, not to promise to people that they will come back in a couple of weeks, but say to people openly that the terms are vague, uncertain, and it's necessary to stand up on your feet very quickly and rebound from these hurdles immediately on your own. But every time, in whatever society may be, there are people who require more help than others, which is why when working systemically together with the government, communities, on sourcing these decisions, as well as finding and sourcing housing for IDPs, a special deal of attention is paid to those who have their own resources in order to meet their own needs, to rent housing, for example, or to participate in different mortgage programs that have been alluded to by Deputy Minister today at the beginning of this event, to make themselves settled without external assistance, even in a place of residence which is of social nature, etc., afforded by the hosting communities. We are paying a lot of attention to senior people, helping families with many children, people with disabilities, etc. And this is all about implementing the principle of not leaving anyone aside or behind, which by and large is typical of all programs, both of humanitarian character and ensuring access to services and enforcing rights. But again, when we speak about whether the housing policy meets the needs of the IDPs nowadays, you know that a great number of humanitarian organizations present here in Ukraine are present here exactly for this reason, because the scale of the challenges is commensurate to the available resources within the state. And it's not about the fact that Ukraine or its government are bad, but it's a fact, it's a reality that we are confronted with. Along with that, Ukraine and Ukrainians are much stronger than it may seem on the face value when you are left alone in isolation. All of the international experts speak in chorus of that. All international employees working in Ukraine are unanimous on this point. Whether or not the government policy is systemic and consistent, probably we are way too far from at least the interim success to argue that. However, along with that, we are much ahead in comparison to the results of 2022. Vlad will probably prove it, together with his peers from the same department. On the 18th of February 2022, we were in Kryvyi Rih together on a monitoring visit of modular towns in which people had been living for 8 years by then. They were made of plastic. They were not meant for such a durable stay, long-term stay for people to stay there. Those IDPs were sorely needed. Any solutions to make sure that they could make a living for themselves. And the greatest challenge for the government, for the state right now, in terms of sourcing the solution for the people who live in such temporary places, collective centers, if these are sanatoria or different kinds of health resorts, which are completely not meant for this kind of purpose, or the plastic modular towns. The quality of the society is identified by how it treats its children, elderly people, and people with disabilities. And regrettably, when we speak about contemporary collective centers, most of the time we see these particular categories people being left stranded. They don't have the necessary support.
That needs support to grow. Those children, lonely pensioners, that households having disabled people. So hopefully together we will be able to arrive at those solutions, not only on the political level, but also practical. Thank you. Thank you very much for mentioning this. Thank you very much for your responses. Thank you very much for Kryvyi Rih. And it's also just as important to talk about that in Ukraine. Unfortunately, we have some experiences of long stay, long residence, and make conclusions. Just to ask Ms. Yulia, are you into strategic studies, right? Yes, Ukraine state policy on internal displacement often responds to that crisis by providing temporary solutions. So how can you put them into the mid-run or then long-run strategic planning? How can we put them into that so that we can see those political levels like residence and occupation strategically? Thank you very much for the invitation. But that gets us to those complicated strategic matters. As soon as we do that, get doing that, it goes boom. I was impressed by your comparison as to the numbers of our internally displaced people. that which is equal to the population of a European countries. I looked into the populations. Estonia has 1,300,000. Latvia like over 2 million. So we can be comparable. In other words, internally displaced people, essentially, how do I perceive them? That's a potential of our country. We cannot afford losing them in any possible way. This is why whatever state policy of recovery policy is supposed to include a policy, an IDP policy as its major part that pertains to their liberties and rights and whatever they might need. This is why I assume that in one or another way we're going to move in that direction with this strong civil society. It seems like there is no other way out, no other pathway for us. And you know what I would like to reiterate and highlight here is we want to talk about the niches not yet full, in my opinion, where civil society activity and perhaps central power, local authorities, their attention might be there. Not so much. We need to say that Ukraine's socio-economic structure has changed due to mass relocation, mass movement to central western regions in one or another way, even if the war ends tomorrow, being realistic or not, and all the occupied territories are regained, then Ukraine is not going to be the way it was before. It's not to the bad thing of that. It will be just different. So if we take, now it's an example, that's one of the best examples. Like if we take just a little community in Lviv Oblast where, the settlers, they want to go, they don't want to go there. No infrastructure, no job, and they left. Okay, anyway, in that community is a depopulation going on because the aborigines, the natives also had left that territory for different circumstances, for different reasons. And in my opinion, when we talk about the local authorities' power, they don't have, they say, resources to receive those settlers, resettlers. Like the budget's not affordable. But if you work with the local authorities, and that's a question, that's a proposition to civil society, why don't you work with them systemically? Why don't you show them so that at least they could create not just conditions for one market or industry, but all the conditions whereby this kind of industry pays taxes. Then there might be another response as opening another business on state money, on grants. And I say it that does work. When it comes to self-employment and opening up a business, it does work, they say. So basically, if we launch such a chain reaction, but without the civil society, it's impossible. Then we're going to get some developed communities, and the local authorities say in plenty that we can only survive, we can only get by on this budget. We don't have an involvement budget. Yes, if once we have an involvement budget, that will be our potential or capacity. I would like to say, okay, Miss Yulia, many people have their responses, have their comments, and another question for Victoria before I put it over for feedbacks. Right, Victoria, there was a talk about settlers as a resource, about coordinating voice. Your organization has very successful advocacy cases and actually voting cases included. So what are the advocacy related directions or areas pertaining to IDPs do you think should be high priority when it comes to advocacy? Right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your invitation. Yes, it's true. Our organization is specializing since our foundation in advocacy, protecting the IDP rights. And today there was a talk already that internally displaced people, I would even not say not actually a resource, but a possibility, opportunity for the community to have the blood transfused and therefore get new possibilities for community development. But if we talk about advocacy, like standing for um, the IDP rights, I would say that this kind of advocacy should be based on the actual needs of the IDPs, because we basically understand in principle what challenges people run into down the communities. We understand there could be issues with residency, housing, social security, but nevertheless, and that goes back a long way, advocacy history, in this year or late in last year or in this year already, there is a study methodology developed for assessing the IDP needs by the former Ministry of Reintegration, which is public. That was a public program. Many communities tried and used that methodology. There's lots of NGOs and communities using their own toolkits for searching, for studying those needs. And it's important, really, that's another important advocacy theme, that the aim of advocacy should be based on the real picture, on the background of what an IDP wants, especially concerning a particular specific community, because when those needs are researched, they also look for potential solutions, because experts and NGOs, they, of course, got to provide some pathways, potential solutions, some sort of like living, housing opportunities. So sometimes we do polling and surveying of IDPs and such kind of studies, and they provide their own potential solutions in response how they see, they would like to see it as a picture, they would like to have it resolved like one or another theme. So now, by taking the opportunity of this platform, I would like to urge all the councils and all the NGOs to use the needs evaluation, because our studies have a goal. It's not just doing it out of doing it. This has a goal of advocacy for IDP rights, and it all has to start with the scale assessment of the scope of issues, and then it's finding out how those IDPs see as the possibility of addressing one or another issue. And now let's get up to the national level. The law on people's power was adopted a short time ago, and that's the election thing. I mean, it goes back to 2019, and at that time, by law, the IDPs became community residents, community population. That's a lot of changed, and now the communities are given certain time to change their statutes and regulatory documents that are regulated by local democracy institutes. That's tools of participatory and that boils down to like consultation, giving advice. That's as one of the instruments, tools of local democracy. So we can see that it's good to help communities to consult each other and change those acts of law that regulate engagement between the communities and the power, because now the IDPs are the community population, and they are entitled just as much to make decisions and have an impact just as local residents. There will be like a transition period, but we really need to urge the local authorities and communities to make those local changes so that the IDPs could in full measure directly, not only via the NGOs, but so that they could take part directly, not via the centers communicating with the authorities, but they should by themselves be able to take part. And most importantly, they should be able to make amends to the statutes, to the provisions on IDPs, and say to the internally displaced people that such changes are being invisible, that they can, and it's not just several people being active players and not active players. Lots of matters are resolved by already people having the rights and possibilities. So I want to take this opportunity and say it's very important to convey this information to the settlers, to the community residents, because this law concerns not only internally displaced people, but also the youth. And today, that was an important decision. And we people that are into the IDPs, we need to promote this idea. We need to develop it so that in a year or two, the communities have some activists inside themselves. That would also include the internally displaced people. Okay, thank you for the answers. I've got a little flash question. So we can see now, and we are all witnessing some sort of fragmentation between the state level when it comes to public discussion and the communities. You mentioned localization and challenges and the breakdown between the ministries. And in the last 11 years, 12 years, we have seen versatile things. We saw an outbreak of civil society by the creation of councils. We saw many different things. In other words, what are the three elements and three things it's important to do right now so that that developed mechanism of relationships with the councils keeps existing for the development and for the benefit of the recovery? Okay, the first thing was already mentioned. I will only repeat that will be tools of local direct democracy. It's very important to use them, very valuable. It's very important to share about them, very valuable. Now, another tool is the understanding of what resources are available. For example, when we talk today, we're short of raising one topic that will obviously close all the problems, address all the problems. The settlers might use, look, not use, but look, we have people in this country that require housing, resources, materials, support, and there are organizations like production industries that are supportive of those people, that are employing them potentially, and also a few financial areas, financial resources for SMEs, for micro business, to support women's business. Very productive. Every year there is a competition going on for Ukraine's recovery, and in that process, they happen to have a pretty complicated discussions with decisions, solutions to put them on the table as in the form of an alliance, new skills and new abilities to requalify potentially new qualifications that will be indispensable for recovery. And in my opinion, such tools that really contribute to economic resilience and give the people an opportunity to work, give them the opportunity to look for solutions by themselves is very important. And three questions, another one very important. I can't disagree that society and its level determines how people are perceptive or towards those that are in tough on luck, just to see how those support instruments, tools are working, by how much they are tailored, how much you can rest on them, how can you develop that economy of care, how you can develop the systems by using those money, those means to support SME, you can address solutions and provide and receive solutions for a group, for example, of women that will decide on their own where are we building up this new school, where are we building up this new kindergarten, where are we building up some supported living system, supported housing system for the internally displaced people. What will them give this possibility to take advantage this aiming to provide gender-sensitive and inclusive recovery, new pathway for to create a very little but economically resilient and sustainable enterprise. You can see how dealing with one problem, we can comprehensively also touch on other different problems, and we can rest then for the way forward on what we are doing today. Thus, very briefly, three things. In my opinion, I will agree with the colleagues that comes to impact tools, financial impact included, to be able to evolve and to be able to have an impact on the bodies that they have created. Another point is strengthening of communication activity between IDP councils and the IDPs residing down their community, because the more the councils know, the more problems they can highlight to their representatives, and the more those IDPs know about the activities of those councils, the more those councils have an impact on the authority they work with. And also another thing, those IDPs should be able to contribute to making policy on the central level, especially on the central level. Miss Yulia, your 3 steps. I will continue what I was talking about, that research on IDP councils should also include a study on local and regional support programs. And it's interesting what you will get in that, and my impression that's an area where you should go into for developing the regions and communities, not just for a check off, but in for real, for keeps, with business, with basic categories, with social security support. All of that needs to be put into place. And the second thing is the state, of course. And I hope very much that later in this year, we're going to get a new updated strategy and a plan D for its implementation, because it's a must, because without this you can't move forwards within the state general state policy. And the third thing is making awareness raising. That's raising everybody's awareness about everything concerning IDPs, because what I can look and see is unfortunately those campaigns are failing. For example, if you take what the State Employment Service proposes, and they have done a lot. I even know that down the regions, they collected information on all the NGOs providing services to IDPs, and they got it. But the IDPs don't know about that, right? They go like, we need assistance, we need help, like revenues and standalone messages and standalone channels via which they will reach out for different audiences. Thank you, Victoria. Now 3 advocacy tips on how to make it steady and resilient, that movement. It's difficult to say, just to be honest, because my impression is that it's very important that those IDP councils really assemble, because they are eager to work, because I don't believe in such stories that somebody follows a resolution or in executive order from paper. Not everything not what you expect. We got a principle of self-governance. There is self-reliance down in the communities, and hopefully those councils and public councils and IDP councils will be created for the people that have strong enough to work for the benefit of the IDPs.
And those who will be rendered inefficient or dysfunctional, possibly, I mean, it's a natural thing to happen, right? A natural situation when something is not happening the way that you're expecting it to. But it doesn't mean that in every community an efficient IDP council should be. But something else that impresses me, which is necessary for the effective operations of IDP councils, it's a well-established communication between these councils and government authorities. Now we are observing the fact that the government is saying that these IDP councils have to assume the responsibility for ensuring and protecting the rights of IDPs, making sure that all of their needs are met. However, on behalf of the communities, we can see that the communities cannot bear this responsibility which the government is expecting them to dispense of. So I think that these IDP councils can become a bridge between the communities and ensuring the honest dialogue between them and the government, because where there is no such honest dialogue, IDPs begin to suffer. Pure, honest people begin to suffer because they are left in isolation with their problems. Communities feel that they cannot do anything right. The government thinks that someone else has to do it instead of the government. So to ensure this effective work, I suppose that both the communities, the society has to communicate properly with the government, and when each of the parties discovers how they can operate, how they can support each other and amplify each other, and these councils can become the bridge for these communities in communicating, ensuring this communication between local authorities and the IDPs and local fields. I suppose it will greatly alleviate the whole situation. Thank you, Lydia. Yes, a lot has already been said. 3 things that I would like to look at, maybe repeating them slightly, but look at them from a different angle. First is networking. It's critical for IDP councils to think that they are not, that they are unique in the set of different rankling issues that they run into, just like Ms. Oksana mentioned it when they were presented their presentation on behalf of Stabilization Support Services. These councils have to become a platform for this networking. Second thing, people who will be coming back from abroad will not be able to get back to their original residencies, places of residence, because these places are occupied. So unfortunately, they will also end up being IDPs, and it's indispensable for them to be keyed in, to be immediately involved in the work of these IDP councils. These people have to understand at once that they're part of this network. Thirdly, right from the beginning, we mentioned it, that more often than not, in this empathic desire to meet all of the needs of IDPs, IDP councils begin to work as service providers, but instead they have to understand clearly who service providers as organizations are, not only public organizations, but also NGOs, whether it be small or large, or separate initiative individuals, active individuals, and different organizations. In a lot of communities, we have the so-called social facilitators working, the people who can perform unqualified social protection services. They do not require any licenses to act as social workers, to bring some food to a retiree who is housebound or bedridden, or go to the households where people require some domestic help. So these resources also need to be harnessed. They need to be sourced, and it doesn't mean that the head of an IDP council needs to go and knock on the doors of such individuals, the affected population, people in need. So each of us, both here in Kiev and there in fields, we are all part of the solutions that can be developed. we do not only identify problems, we act and live in order to resolve these problems. Thank you very much. We have some questions from our members of audience. People are raising their hands. So I'm giving you the mic. I have noted down, we have spoken about alliances, the national platform, the strategy, honest dialogue, and networking. All of this sounds pretty much like a plan. And now the first question, Olena, please. Yes, we thank all of the speakers. I would like to address all of you and to follow up on what Ina said, that the overall change in the society and the numbers of our vulnerable cohorts and the general need for the social economy, which hasn't been shaped yet, but nearly everyone has touched upon. So my question in connection with all of this is whether our IDP councils can become ambassadors of the new approach to utilize in order to shape a new formation of the economy as such, because the majority of IDPs work on a voluntary basis and they deliver a lot of services at that. And public government-owned programs could provide them with support. There are different kinds of initiatives at the centers of resilience and other kinds of information services. But again, this information is always needed and lacking. So my question is, how can we make sure that we can perceive all of the opportunities in a qualitative way? And how can they contribute to the IDP councils for them to become effective and utilize both donor and government-owned resources? Thank you very much, Elena. So who does this question go to? So that our panelists don't say my question is too complicated. Whoever has something to say, the mic is free. So how can we make it happen? Well, I thought that Ms. Ina would be speaking. Yes, you have said it all. Honestly, communication, information sharing, looking for available opportunities, working together, teaching and working together, supporting each other, networking. A network exists for us to complement each other with our capabilities. Obviously, I see no other ways out. Speak more, articulate more loudly about what we can, in addition to what we need. So we need not only to articulate our problems, but that we are also part of the solutions. To pick up on that, members of IDP councils are usually the people who work on a voluntary basis. They work for free. These are the people with their families, jobs, and they cannot dedicate and commit 100% of their free times working in these advisory bodies. Therefore, it strikes me, now that we understand that there are lots of different trends and areas and lines along which these IDP councils can work, they need to strategize for themselves and understand what they need to advocate on the basis of their communities for local authorities to work on, because you can work on whatever and try to cover it all. And on the other hand, you can set specific tasks, very narrow ones, for example, housing issues. An IDP council may decide that during this year, at least, they will be dealing with the housing issues and needs of their IDPs or within their region, depending, for example, on the mandate of this IDP council. And then it seems to me that if there is this consensus within this advisory body achieved, then the members of these councils will be able to find partnerships for themselves, attend different functions, reach out to other partnership organizations, NGOs and CSOs, which specialize in these particular issues. Because right now, material resources and time resources, human resources, are badly restricted. Therefore, we have to value our time, strategize, have your own plans, because this is something that we always require from government authorities, which is why IDP councils can embrace this experience and basically become models, demonstrating very specific examples, working on these key performance indicators, developing their own roadmap. I think it will be easy for them to find their own partners and new opportunities will open up. as opposed to a situation when you are overwhelmed and it seems to be so chaotic when you try to delve in this and that. But if you come to think of it, it's not your professional activity, so value your time and try to be as constructive as you can. Thank you. Let me have my say. Everything that's been said, I think, is very much about learning. So IDP councils should, when strategizing and identifying what they are not going to do, discarding different unnecessary things, it will be easier for them to prioritize, because it's hard to prioritize if you have 25 different pieces of fruit. But if you see what you definitely need, then it definitely becomes easier. So we need to learn not only these elements of project management, KPIs, etc., but something else that you have at your disposal, the social passport of your respective communities, which has already identified the vulnerable cohorts in your community, the institutions which are helping you, the gaps which are there, local development plans, regional strategy for development, local instruments of democracy. We simply do not know, for most part, what hides behind these notions, because if we did, then local residents would probably be able to gather around themselves active neighbors to come up with interesting ideas and get them off the ground. So I think that IDP council members can become such ambassadors, but this will definitely take some time to teach them, as well as learn how to use the available resources. Thank you, dear panelists. Are there any more questions? Ms. Natalia, please. Good afternoon, everyone. Probably it's not so much as a question, but rather a reflection, because I understand this is the end of the working day. Moreover, it's a Friday. I would like to present my reflection. We're speaking about learning, experience, some examples and illustrations. I'm an IDP from Lugansk region, and here in our midst are many more. And, you know, Ms. Yana, for example, she is someone who was there at the very early origin of my career. And I am a chief of a military administration from Lugansk region. And this is going to be a transversal idea right now, because the IDP councils, the civil society, I'm also a part of the civil society, because I began by going to my local regional councils, village council, and I said, this is what I want. And when Ms. Yana came to us, she said, no, this is not going to work. We need to work consistently. And it made me become a head of my local council. It doesn't mean that I made it difficult and uncomfortable for someone and made them go, but everyone is institutionally responsible, and IDPs are also institutionally responsible, especially if they have the experience from 2014, how to work, how to ideate, how to generate projects. We are ready to work as part of the civil society. You are inspiring me, especially those of you who as IDPs have been there since 2014, how you haven't lost the energy and drive. You haven't lost yourselves. I mean, it's invaluable, because I became an IDP again in 2022. And now I feel that on the one hand, I am a representative of the civil society, and I see what my capacity is. A lot of local heads, local communities, when they look at me, they understand where I'm coming from, because before 2014, there was no decentralization reform launched, and we lost a lot of people who could have relocated to responsive communities, but we didn't know how to do it because we were restricted in terms of budget, funding, etc. But now these local heads, they can create so much using these people who are so full of different resources and ideas, who go to them and say, look, this is how it's going to work. It's not going to work otherwise. So we are a driver in many ways. It's hard to speak about the role of military administrations, but one point to make is the institutional memory and institutional capacity and being attached to a particular territory when talking about our plans and prospects, what it is that we want. Do we want to get integrated in the hosting communities, or to bear responsibility for making sure that we get back to our regional territories and make sure that people can come back and rebuild these ruined communities. So these processes of uncertainty, when we as representatives of local authorities are regarded as certain power usurpers, you see, you probably understand what I mean. So this contributes very much to a specific vertical where there is not much left to fencing, but still there are some mechanisms in place of being attached to a particular territory. And you understand the people who are painting, who still remember how the sun rises in Lugansk region. Well, it makes me cry. I thought that I would be more serious. Sorry. So I say, I'm a Ukrainian. No matter where, I remain a Lugansk resident. I speak for myself. So I can present a lot of reflections and present a lot of examples of how we worked. When those people went to us and said, shake up, come on, do something for your own sake, from CSOs when they would say to us, do you want a youth center? This is how it will work. Do you want qualitative services? This is how it will work. Come up with your passport, agenda passport of your community and self-help passport. This was a great thing that activated our civil society. We knew the needs of every individual in places. We even had the intersection of, the cross-section of even local farms in gender-sensitive notions. So we need to be attached to our local geographies and hosting communities, come up with ideas, implement them in line with all of these things. I remember I lived in Ivan-Frankivsk region for 7 months. I would go to local council and I would say, look, there's a fantastic project, let's do it together. And they would say, go away from here because we will have to report on that, we don't want that. And I wanted to do that because it was so relatable to me. But now the heads of the communities, they can see that, and it's such a pity that we can lose such great people. But I will definitely be joyous for my fellow boys and girls who will be working in these new hosting communities. And I will always be thinking fondly of them because they are the people who will be contributing to the recovery of Ukraine. Thank you very much for your experience on behalf of the community as an IDP, and now you're a hosting community representative yourself. Yes, I'm so very much appreciative of your intervention. So 2 things to say. The institutional memory. It can be institutional in a sense of a particular institution, or in terms of skills, knowledge, and expertise that a particular individual carries. Like when you went to Ivano-Frankivsk, when you would get back to your Lugansk region or Genichinsk, you will always carry this baggage with you, because you will always be able to say, we have a plan to recover and to rebuild, because whatever we do, all of these skills are already an indelible part of us, intrinsic part of our being. So when I go back to Zaporizhia region, people like myself and you, a great number of my friends from Lugansk and Donetsk regions who will be getting back, who will be willing to go back or pass on this desire to their children to go back and rebuild, these skills and expertise will never fade away or disappear from them. And this made me think of the analogy that was generated in 2022, February, when everyone got scattered and it seemed that the civil society was dispersed. But as soon as an individual found themselves a place to stay, they would immediately call and say, hello, I'm in Zvagil. I can accept such and such parcels. How can we help people who are, suffering right now? So this was like mercurial quality to hook up to some people who could continue these logistic connections. So this is the institutional memory, which in the horizontal lines in the civil society will never disappear, no matter whether we work in the civil society, school, business, or a particular authority.
So I think we're going to win. Thank you, Lydia, very much. We've got yet another question, like from Lakewood Metal as a must-have thing. What is your question, sir? I'm Alex Sidnick. I come from Donetsk, and I'm an IDP myself, and I live in the Uman community. First of all, thank you for the very analytical piece of work that you have done, that down the regions were missing that sort of unification and some sort of information that we want to get to a certain extent. And number two is just to say that all the other communities, even in the Oman rayon, needs to say that not every community takes the IDPs positively. And the problems that we're running into down the gramadas, down the communities, need to be addressed by some sort of alliance between the IDP groups, and we need more mandate because from experience of working in Donbass and from other experiences, we are bringing and we can bring our own project to those communities. We can feel them, we work on them, we understand how to put them into practice, because unfortunately not all the communities have expertise in the already made project, already implemented project that we have. So I am for that sort of unification. I am for exchanging information and like a confederation of IDPs organizations. Thank you very much for your efforts. Very interesting, very much to the point. We had like three questions, and on the off chance somebody else wants to say from the floor, somebody wants to comment, or okay, then I'm gonna end this panel. Thank you for your thoughts. Thank you for your contributions. Today's discussion wasn't simple. Thank you for being frank and outright, and thank you for actually contributing to and making a new IDP policy. It is just to remind you that this particular intervention is only possible as being supported by the International Renaissance Foundation, and this is one of the biggest supports, kinds of supports from the foundation itself and from the other studies that were also supported by the International Renaissance Foundation. Thank you very much for your attention, and you're asked, you're invited to visit with each other. Thank you for the panel. Thank you, dear colleagues. We're going to win. And high appreciation to Miss Yana for the moderation of today's activity.